Well, hi and welcome everyone. This is Regina Huber, and we are here today to talk about how to master your workload and to relieve the pressure. We look into how to set priorities, delegate successfully, and reduce your stress, how to win the battle against excessive workload. This is the stress beating blueprint for prioritization, delegation, and career success. Now, who is this training for? It's for people who want to reduce their stress, obviously, right? To alleviate their anxiety, people in corporate, professional services, not-for-profit, business owners, professionals looking to manage busy schedules or heavy workloads, and of course, also busy leaders and managers who want to delegate more and more successfully. Who is this training not for? It's not for closed-minded people who are not open to different ways of doing. If you keep doing the same thing and expect a different outcome, you know what that does, right? So that doesn't make sense. People who want a quick fix without putting in the work doesn't usually work. People who are not committing to create positive change for themselves and those around you, people who love to be a victim and are not ready to take responsibility, just does not work. And of course, nobody loves naysayers. So if you fall into any of these categories, then I would say hop off now and save your time and do something that might give you more value. But if you're still on, then I'm assuming that you don't fall into those categories. And what we will cover today is that what you can do to reduce your stress and your workload. Even if you don't know how to delegate or who to delegate to, even if you think it's not the right time, but when is it ever a great time to change something? Our minds resist change. They want to stay in the same old. That's just how our minds are wired, right? So it never seems the right time to create change, but it oftentimes is. Even if you think you're just too busy to focus on stress management and there's no way out, well, this is a vicious circle. If you don't deal with it, it's not going to go away. The stress is here to stay. You will learn an effective approach that gives you quick results, and it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Now let's look into this. Let's take a sneak peek into the 1, 2, 3. Step 1 is about techniques to deal with anxiety or stress as it arises in the moment. Step 2 is about managing priorities and setting boundaries. That includes being strategic about what tasks you take on. More about that later. And step 3 is about delegating. Or if you don't currently have the authority, if you're not in a leadership position to delegate yourself, then it's about negotiating the redistribution of tasks with your manager. We'll get into these 3 steps shortly, but before we do, I wanted to quickly share a recent success story about my client, Barbara. Barbara applied these 3 steps and she was able to cut 10 plus hours of busy time from her weekly workload and free up time for her family and friends. What could you do with 10 more hours? Would you have more time for your hobby, your passion project, your friends, your family, to relax, maybe just get more sleep, work out more, practice self-care? So many things we could do with 10 extra hours, don't you think? Now, you may think this only works for certain people like Barbara. The truth is my strategies work in any industry, at any level, and in any language, not just for senior vice presidents as Barbara. And these strategies you will see today also work in any environment, including the most challenging ones. You just got to be consistent. It's all about consistency. Just quickly checking on the chat. So why are we doing this? Partly we're doing this to reduce your stress and partly to refocus towards strategic priorities that help you advance in your career, that help you find time to showcase your unique brilliance and gain promotion eligibility. One of my current clients refocused her priorities using my Taskmaster tool, delegating back office tasks. I call them back office tasks or admin tasks, right? And focusing on spotlight activities, which increased her visibility with decision makers and quickly elevated her to promotion candidate status. Reducing your stress can enhance your chances to be promoted. Isn't that amazing? So it's not just about your stress, it's also about your career. If you're in this masterclass right now, then I'm assuming that you're highly competent, working really hard, and probably far too many hours. Too much on your plate and too little time to eat, right? And if you're here right now, then you're likely not seeing your family enough. Maybe you're spending your weekends behind your laptop. You might even be at home, but you're only physically there, not mentally or emotionally present with the people at your home. And you cannot enjoy enough quality time with loved ones, whether that's your family, your friends, your partner, yourself, right? And if you're here, maybe your relationship is suffering because of the situation. Maybe your partner feels neglected because you don't have enough time for them. And your friends hardly recognize you, and you have to send them a photo before meeting up with them because they wouldn't recognize you anymore otherwise. That actually happened to me at some point in my life in the past. Quickly checking here, we're still recording. Yes. Okay, great. And maybe you're also, despite all of this, not getting the recognition you deserve, not having the paycheck you deserve, not getting the promotion you deserve for all your hard work and dedication. And that can, of course, be very frustrating. And it only will add to your stress and anxiety. That's quite natural, right? Because if you're sacrificing so much and putting in all these hours, but you don't know for what because you're not getting the recognition, then that is definitely stressful. So what is it for you of these possibilities that I just laid out to you here? I'm curious. Maybe you want to share in the chat. Okay, I'm seeing too many hours, weekends not off. Okay. No clear schedules. Absolutely. Strict deadlines or tight deadlines. Yeah, exactly. Well, there's a lot going on, right, in our lives. And it's not just work. We have so many other things to do in our lives, like running errands, all the other stuff that we need to fit into our schedule. So let's look at how to reduce your stress, alleviate your anxiety, manage your workload better, delegate more, set boundaries and stick to them. Do the work you should really be doing and enjoy your work more or enjoy it more again. Today, you're going to learn techniques to deal with anxiety or stress as it arises in the moment, instantly. Also, sometimes we get triggered by certain situations. So what are your triggers? Think about that. What triggers stress in you? For me, it's paperwork. I could never be a great accountant because I do not like paperwork. And it stresses me out. It makes me feel anxious if I do not prepare for it. And that's what we are here to learn, right? Manage priorities and set boundaries, and then delegate successfully or negotiate the redistribution of tasks. All of that without putting your career at risk or having to become even more efficient and doing more with less time. That's not the the objective here. And without threatening the relationship with your manager or team. Who am I even to talk about this? Well, I'm the founder and CEO of Transform Your Performance. I'm a transformational leadership coach, inspirational speaker, and author. I have experience on 5 continents, quite eclectic experience. Also had leadership roles at BCG, Boston Consulting Group, in 6 locations on several different continents. And I've owned businesses in 3 countries in the Americas. And then I'm an author. Yes, many other things too, but it hasn't always been like that. In fact, I grew up as the shyest kid on a farm in a tiny village in Germany. And I was so shy, I would lock myself up in my room so I wouldn't have to go to kindergarten. And this is me in 1st grade. And in sports class, I always was picked last for ball games at school. Later on, when we did those, we actually didn't play a lot of ball games from grade 1 to 4, but after grade 5 we did. So I love playing ball games, actually, and I would have liked it a lot if it hadn't been for that awkward moment when the teams were put together. I hated that part. The best players always got to choose the rest of the team, and they wanted to win. So they chose everyone else first but me, because I wasn't fast enough for basketball or handball, and my volleyball serves just really sucked. And what's really funny is that our handball queen, actually, our team leader, actually looked like this chick here. But anyway, the chick on the left. And I learned that I wasn't good enough. I felt rejected, and I developed a strong fear of rejection that followed me through a big part of my life. And there's much more to this not lovable, not enough, and rejection story that was added during my teenage years, but let's just leave it at that for time's sake, because I know you're busy. So what matters for our purposes here is that I overcompensated. And I want you to think about where you are doing the same. Where do you overcompensate? For example, by taking on too many responsibilities in your job. I know a lot of people have similar stories, right? And I compensated by working endless hours, by neglecting my own needs, failing to set boundaries and to negotiate properly for myself. Does that sound familiar, anybody? Have you ever done this? Neglected yourself, overburdened yourself. I didn't know how to speak up for myself, how to negotiate for myself. Maybe you're experiencing something similar and you're not speaking up for yourself enough. Maybe you're not great at delegating because you fear that other people wouldn't do the work as well as you do it, and this could harm your reputation. These were my symptoms too. After all, I needed my work to be perfect. I was a people pleaser. So why am I telling all this again? Because I want you to think about what might lead you to overburden yourself at work. Why would you do that? It's really important to think about so that you can decide that this reason is no longer valid for you. Through my own experience, I learned that standing up for others is not enough. As leaders, we also need to lead ourselves and our own careers. You know, self-leadership includes many things. It also includes leading your own career. Being a great leader for others starts with self and for self as well. You will then be a role model to those around you, but also if you have kids, you know, to your children as well. So I've coached clients at all levels in the US, in Africa, Asia, Europe, Latin America. I've spoken at events and taught workshops on those 5 continents. And what I found is that stress-related issues are similar everywhere across the board, and that my holistic approach is successful in any industry for any job level all over the world. And here's one of my clients in the US in financial services. This is Aquia. She loved my multidisciplinary approach. I call it a holistic approach to coaching. Some people call it multidisciplinary approach. And this is what it really is. This is Magdalena. She is in tech in Spain, and she successfully tackled her initial challenges as a new leader. That included, of course, time. That included juggling new responsibilities, right? And here are some other examples. In Africa, my dear client, Josi, he is in South Africa and he works in mining. And he refocused his priorities so that he could achieve higher team engagement, among other things. This is Raoni Makoko. She's in Botswana, and she said her entire life had transformed. Because when you transform, when you make a few changes in the professional arena, that can have a huge impact on your entire life. Would you agree?
Thank you very much for having given me an opportunity to enroll and transform your performance.
So this was her talking. I'm going to cut it off here, but you can definitely find her testimonials online as well. This is Harsha. She's in financial services in the US. And she said that she was very impressed with my approach, and it really helped her put things in perspective. And I think that's something that is very relevant for stress management, for better delegating, and for our topic here today. And the list goes on. These are just a few examples. So the 3 steps we're going to look into right now are to learn techniques to instantly alleviate your stress and anxiety. Then we're going to look at managing priorities and setting boundaries, and eventually at delegating successfully or negotiating the redistribution of tasks if you cannot delegate them yourself. Step number 1, learn techniques to instantly alleviate stress and anxiety as it arises immediately in the moment. What techniques have you tried so far, if any? So if you want to share in the chat, please do. I know a lot of people who signed up will watch the replay. I received dozens of messages from people who signed up. We had over 100 people, over 110 people sign up actually. And most people will watch the replay just because they have these crazy busy schedules, right? And they find it hard to make time for themselves. But if you're here, I welcome you, and you're very welcome to share. Okay, if there's no shares right now, then I will move on with step 1. We're going to move right into this. This is about studying and experimenting with techniques to conquer your anxiety. I want you to have at least one technique that you can use in that moment. And it should be something that's easy to remember and to do. I want to teach you today a simple yet very effective technique in this masterclass, because anxiety is a very common symptom and you need to be able to deal with it in the moment. And why simple? Because simple is good, because you will remember it and you will actually do it. So let's do this together. First, before we do this though, I want to quickly talk also about emergency mode. So when you are anxious about a deadline, that doesn't really help you at all. Now, let's say you have this deadline coming up and you have a very full schedule and it's all a little bit overwhelming, right? Now, if you go into anxiety mode, then that's actually counterproductive, because anxiety and productivity are mutually exclusive. They are like oil and water. They don't mix. So you cannot be in emergency mode and creative mode at the same time. That's just not possible. And here's one thing. Did you know that brain scans of people with anxiety look the same as brain scans of people with depression? I think that's very, very interesting. The difference is depression is about the past, while anxiety is about the future. Both are some kind of worry, right? So anxiety is fear about what might happen. And that is not helpful when we need to be creative and productive and perform. So let's dive into this technique together. And please do this with me and just play along and see how it works for you. And if this is not the right technique for you, I invite you to find another one that is also simple. But try it out first, experiment, and then you evaluate the technique for yourself. Okay? So let's do this together. Take a deep breath at first and then smile. Why? Because a smile sends a signal to your brain that everything is okay. And observe what that does, if it has a relaxing effect. Now, of course, you might not be stressed out right now if you're here. So you might want to experiment with this again when you're actually in a real-time stress situation. And if that feels good to you, then close your eyes. And if not, just find a gazing spot in front of you. And picture a stressful situation you typically run into, or one that you remember right now from the past. And with your eyes closed, imagine now flying above your situation and hovering in the air, becoming the observer of it. You're no longer part of the picture. You're now the observer of the situation. And ask yourself, as the observer, is this situation really that serious? Is it really life-threatening? What's the worst thing that could happen? You know, a lot of situations we perceive as life-threatening, although they are really not. Why? Because we go into survival mode, into emergency mode. And then, of course, everything else is more important than producing and being creative, right? When you live under the influence of the hormones of stress, you're too focused on saving your skin, on the external environment, and on time. So as you're observing the situation, you're hovering above it, much like a hummingbird. And that's why I call it the hummingbird's perspective. Think about this. How serious is this situation really? And if your eyes are closed, open your eyes. And I'm curious if that gave you some relief. Again, when you live under the influence of the hormones of stress, you're too focused on saving your life. And you may even obsess about time as if a predator were after you, right? So you need some way to get out of survival mode, and quickly. And this is just one of many possible ways. Because when you do this, you actually give yourself a break and you break the pattern, and you can now restart with a calmer mind. And also, by the way, remember that you are bigger than this situation. You're so much more powerful than you think and feel when you're anxious. You're much more potent than this. Always remember that. All right. So, quick comment about overwhelm. Overwhelm is self-created. The good news is if you created it, then you can also discreate it. So sometimes a quick change in perspective changes everything. When you're overwhelmed, take a break, take your glasses off if you wear glasses. Shut your laptop down for a moment and change your perspective. And see what that little gesture does already. Something like this can be very powerful. Moving on in our content here. Step 2, managing priorities and setting boundaries. All right. So I'm just quickly checking here that it's still recording. And yes, we are. Yes, we are still recording. Wonderful. All right. First of all, we need a mindset shift here. Stop managing time. Manage your creativities and priorities instead. I want to cringe every time I hear people talk about time management. Because if you try to manage time, you're bound to fail. Because there is no such thing as time management, even if we want to use that term, right? Time just is. Now, having said that, I personally had experiences where I actually extended time. This is it's a funny anecdote that I wanted to quickly share with you. I had studied extending time in my holistic studies at some point, and it's quite fascinating. And I had two specific instances where I applied it and it worked. And one of them being a traffic jam, and one of them being running late for a flight on my way to the airport because I'd gone to the wrong airport. This was years ago in Buenos Aires. And I was supposed to fly down to Patagonia for work. And I automatically went to the domestic airport instead of the international one. But on my way there, I noticed that flight was actually leaving from the international airport, which was much farther away. In both instances, the time required in both these examples, in the traffic jam and going to the airport, the time required to get to my destination was much shorter than it could have possibly been. I made it on time to both. However, I would still say that I didn't really manage time or extend time, although we might call it that. I rather think that something in my reality just was affected and it shifted by using that tool that I learned. And it's really, really fascinating. I just wanted to quickly share that anecdote with you as a side, right? But what you can manage is your priorities, your activities, and your resources within a specific period of time. That's what we can do. Time itself, not so much, right? Now, you've probably seen this before. This is the Kobe quadrant matrix. You're probably familiar with it. If not, I suggest that you Google it, that you find out about it yourself, because a lot of people are familiar with it. So I don't want to spend too much time on it. It's also called the Eisenhower matrix. Sometimes it's the urgent important matrix by Stephen Covey. It's definitely useful, but for most of my clients, it's a bit more complicated than this. So I have created a tool that they can use to prioritize their activities and tasks, and I called it Task Master. And you can actually get that tool for free. And I'm gonna later give you the link for that as well. Taskmaster is also a simple tool because simple is good. And what simple is what we used. I said that earlier, right? And it has to be easy to use. So it's a really simple tool. It's just a little bit different than this matrix here. Now, my Taskmaster tool that I just mentioned is all about being strategic about what activities you take on, what activities you keep, what activities you delegate. Because being strategic about what you put on your work plate is really, really important for your career, not just for your stress level. So what is this about? It's about what gives you visibility, what gives you positive visibility, as I like to call it, what's relevant for the role, the promotion you want, for the career you want. What are those activities and responsibilities? Because productivity doesn't get you promoted. Positive visibility does. Positive visibility gets you promoted. That's a big mindset shift right there already for a lot of people. So be strategic. Choose wisely when it comes to taking on additional responsibility. Because additional responsibilities do not automatically make you eligible for a promotion. That's not true, right? Also, when something comes onto your work plate, which usually is already full, then something else needs to go. Don't wait to negotiate that. Take care of that before you add anything or while you're adding it. Unless, of course, you have too much time and too little work, which I'm not assuming is your case if you're here today. All right. So for those who have joined a little bit later, we have a lot of people signed up here. I think the latest count was 114 people this morning, but of course, a lot of people are extremely busy and their schedules might have not allowed them to be live with us. So they will receive the replay and you will receive that too as well. Okay, moving on here. Setting boundaries and communicating clearly about additional tasks is really, really important. Learning to set boundaries is a deep process. So it's not about being aggressive, it's about being firm. And at the same time, still staying flexible when there's a real short-term need to chip in some extra effort. Yes. It's also important to practice language for this, conversational intelligence. It's important to position your boundary if that's, oftentimes that's required, right? So that you can actually defend it going forward and you don't have to explain yourself every time again. And you want to do this without getting defensive. Really keep it factual, and that's easier when you keep a record of your responsibilities and how you employ your time. Set boundaries and stick to them, because otherwise they are useless. So consistency, again, is key. It makes you more credible as a boundary setter. And in this way, you are creating new habits for yourself and for those around you, for other people in your team. So what's your experience with this? I'm really curious. Is there anybody who would like to share their experience with boundary setting? Any challenges you ran into? Okay, if not, we're just gonna move on here. But think about it, right? And how could you address those challenges? Also, if you have any other questions after this masterclass, I'm always here to answer them. You can easily reach out to me on LinkedIn or via email at regina@transformyourperformance.com. Moving on to step number 3. And for those of you who have just joined us, welcome. Step number 3 is about delegating successfully or negotiating the redistribution of tasks if you don't have the authority to make delegation decisions quite yet, because then you will need to negotiate with your manager maybe. But here's the thing. If you're not showing authority in your career, you might also not be given authority later. You know how some people say dress for the job you want or for the role you want? Well, it's the same as authority. Show the authority you want to have in the role you want before you even have it. This will allow you to show up as a leader. Okay? All right, so first of all, when we delegate, we need to identify what to delegate. So I mentioned my Taskmaster tool, where that helps you categorize tasks and where you then can more easily decide what to delegate. And here's the link for it. It's transformyourperformance.com/taskmaster. I can also put that in the chat real quick. Oops. Here you go. This is the link for that if you'd like to receive that. Again, it's a simple tool because simple is good. We actually use it. And once you've categorized your tasks, and you can also adapt the tool, by the way, if you download it to your own needs. Once you've categorized them, you then are ready to have your conversations because you've now decided what you want to get rid of in your list of tasks, right? Now, you might have to have a conversation with your manager, or maybe you are the manager, then you will have conversations with your team members. Before you do, though, you will need to identify and assess team members' skills, their ability to take over. Now, of course, you might not even know exactly what they are because maybe you haven't had enough conversations so far with your team. So then you have to talk to them first, right? And find out more about what else is in their potential. What other skills do they have or talents do they have that you haven't even explored yet with them because they are not part of their job description. They've never been asked to do those things. And also in those conversations, you can figure out how enthusiastic they actually are to take on specific tasks you want to give them. And that's also an important part of it, right? So within the team, you need to determine whose interests, passions, and skills and talents are most aligned to assume this particular new responsibility. And maybe something else needs to be redistributed to other people so they can actually do it. Because, you know, we talked before about if you take something on, you need to get something off your plate. Well, the same applies to them as well. Yes, what applies to you applies to them. And maybe you need to hire a new team member, or maybe you need to hire an intern. And if you're not in a position to make delegation decisions, then discuss it with your manager. But even there, show up as a leader and make substantial suggestions. Don't just ask for change, make suggestions, right? And yeah, discuss this also in the context of your career goals. Now, how can we delegate successfully? Trust comes first. It all starts with trust. So we expect trust from our team members, but do we give them enough trust to entrust them with particular tasks, right? So of course, sometimes that requires training them. Training, showing trust and support are, of course, important elements of delegating. Also, celebrating positive results, however small or big they are, and let them know that it's okay to make a mistake and to be learning. After all, they're doing this for the first time, unlike you, who has maybe been doing this for years. Also, tell them that you're available for feedback or any questions they may have along the way. And this is important, right? Do not take over if not everything is going perfectly the first time around. Support, yes. Taking over, no. You don't want to take a step back, right? You want them to learn and move forward. And if they know that you're there to support them and answer your questions, then that's going to be totally, totally great. You're there to coach them. Yes. So once you have now done this, or at the same time, you can start refocusing the time that you have freed up on activities that give you positive visibility and help you advance in your career faster, that help you level up your leadership, and maybe also your self-care, if that's something that's missing in your life right now. So focus on activities that give you positive spotlight. Spend as much time as possible on those. Plan for them, calendar them. Maybe you want to give a presentation to the leadership team and you've never done that, but you should, right? If you're if you have a critical role in that sense. It's different for everybody, of course. Just like also you need to schedule self-care time on your calendar, or else it gets pushed out all the time because there's always something more urgent than self-care, isn't there? Until we get sick, then it's no longer less urgent, right? But is all that urgent stuff that's more urgent than self-care also more important than self-care? It's up to you to decide that, right? Ask yourself this question. All right, so here's what we have just covered. Doing a quick time check here. Techniques to instantly deal with anxiety or stress, managing priorities and setting boundaries, and delegating successfully, or negotiating the redistribution of tasks. And we did start a little bit later. So I hope it's okay with those who have come on live to go over a little bit, and anyone else can watch the replay in their own time anyway. My clicker is not wanting to work. Now it is. Now, if you consistently practice these 3 steps that we just discussed, then managing stress and anxiety becomes second nature. It becomes second nature. It really does. You just got to make a commitment with yourself to start the process, and then you got to be consistent. I've said the word consistent repeatedly in this masterclass because it's the key to success in this arena, just like with anything else in your career. Now, what could it be costing you to not address your stress right now? Think about this. So that gets you really fired up about creating change. Is it costing you happiness? Is it costing you peace of mind? Is it costing you advancement in your career because you're not focusing enough on the work you really should be doing, the visibility work? Is it your emotional well-being? And if you have a business, it's the same, right? Are you not focused enough on prospecting, on your clients, on being out there networking, whatever it is for everybody? And are you doing all this admin stuff instead that you could hire help for? Is it maybe costing you your emotional well-being, your health, your physical well-being? Is it costing you doing the work you really want to do that gives you more satisfaction and is more fun to you because it is more aligned with your strengths and with what you're really here to do as a leader? Is it costing you your reputation as a leader, your relationships at home or your friend relationships, your friendships? Is it costing you freedom? For most people, it's a combination of the things in this list. And in the end, it's always all about freedom. And do you really want to keep doing what you're doing now? Now that you know that it's possible to manage your priorities, delegate more, and reduce your stress. And you can do it. Again, consistency is key. And I also know that consistency is hard for many people. So I want to make this easy for you because you deserve it, right? Would you agree that you deserve it to be easier? Maybe type a yes or a Y in the chat if you think you deserve it. Maybe you're on a phone and it's not as easy to type in the chat. I absolutely believe you deserve it in any case. So that's why I'm offering you a one-on-one stress relief strategy session, and it's valued at $750, and you get it completely free. All you gotta do is sign up here, and it's completely free. It's a full coaching session, okay? Because I'm on a mission to help people relieve their stress and delegate more. It's good for them, and it's also good for their teams. And you can get that at transformyourperformance.com/stress management. I'm going to pop that in the chat as well. If the link does not work for you for any reason, just send me an email as always at regina@transformyourperformance.com and we'll get you scheduled. In this session, you get a taste of what's possible and how to go about it. And we're going to talk about your specific situation. That's the difference to this very general masterclass, because this is for everybody, right? So we would really tackle your specific stress challenge or delegations challenge or setting boundaries challenge. And if I think that my priorities and delegation formula can help you, then we'll talk about that too. This is one of my clients who has worked with me repeatedly, and she has made tremendous progress. She has achieved so much in just 2 years. Yes, and she said that the practical tools I've shared with her can be utilized real time, and that's why she has repeatedly worked with me. Now, this is Dr. Sheila Robinson. I coached at her conference 5 consecutive years in a row, and she said that she has received nothing less than rave reviews on my multidisciplinary approach. And this can work for you too, of course. So your transformation starts with your stress relief strategy session. And then you may be offered a chance to work with me further. So go ahead and book your call now. Take time to answer the questions on the booking form so that we can make the most of our time together. I have a very limited number of time slots for these exclusive 60-minute sessions over the next few days. So if you do not fill out the form, if you do not answer those questions, I might cancel your session because I really want this to be meaningful for you. And in 60 minutes, we can only cover so much, right? But we want to go really, really deep. Now I've got a choice. You can implement what you learned today on your own. Maybe get my book, Speak Up, Stand Out and Shine, where I share more of those tools to manage stress and get prepared for challenging situations, learn techniques. You can start prioritizing. You can start building trust in your team and delegating. Or you can get customized support in a free coaching session that usually people pay $750 for. So book your session now, and I'll be delighted to help you relieve your stress and strategically refocus your efforts toward a successful career as a thriving leader.